Welcome to the Elevate Podcast, a resource designed to take your ministry to the next level. Whether you're a seasoned leader or a growing team member, this podcast will help you sharpen your vision, strengthen your staff, and deepen your impact for the gospel. Each week, we'll bring you honest conversations, practical tools, and insights from real church leaders who understand the unique joys and, yes, the challenges of church ministry. From worship planning to discipleship and outreach, we're here to equip and encourage you for the work God has called you to do. I'm today's host, Travis Cottrell. I serve as the worship minister here at Brentwood Baptist. And with me today is Mack Burns, and we're talking about worship ministry in the church today. All right, Mack Burns, good to have you today.
It is great to be here.
This is kind of fun, right?
Super fun. Thanks for asking me.
I'm so glad that you're here. Okay, so tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit of your story. Give us a little bit of context to why you're here.
Well, I'm the worship minister at our West Franklin campus. Now, we are pretty fresh here. We've been here for 4.5 months. Some days it feels like 4.5 weeks. Other days it feels like it's been a while already. We're starting to settle in. I come from pretty much my entire life, been growing up in church. Dad's a pastor, came from a ministry home, loved it. Always loved going to church. I never really was like the grumpy kid that was like, not again. Loved every time we went. So dad's pastor and mom was a worship leader. I feel like probably with those things in place, I came to where I am now, honestly, just with, those influences in my life. But I've now been 10 years in for full-time church ministry, which is bizarre to
A
say
little
that.
bit more than 10 years, right?
A little bit more than 10 years,
A little bit more than 10 years.
That's true. 11 years.
Yeah.
So that's really weird, but we've loved being here so far. I don't know how much more of the journey you want me to say at the moment.
Well, I'll give a little bit of extra as well.
Sure.
So I've known Mack for all of those years.
Yes.
He had just graduated from Biola University, and I was serving at another church, and I was hiring an associate there. And so I kind of made that search known. We got lots of applications, and maybe 50 or 60 people had applied for that job. And instantly when I read Mack on paper, it was really nice. But when I met Mack in person, it was even better. And I don't know, just somehow out of all those people, some very seasoned, some not quite so seasoned, and then there was you, like 1 foot out of a dorm
Really
room in
not
college,
seasoned.
like right, just barely with a degree in hand.
Correct.
And I just knew that the Lord, I knew you were the guy that the Lord had for us, and so we've worked together. We worked together for
Miraculous.
7 years.
Yes.
And then we went
different
different
ways.
places, and now here together, and so
Yeah.
it's awesome. So I have an innate, for those of you that are listening, I really have an innate trust of Mack and his voice and leadership and worship, and so this is good to have this conversation.
I'm
right?
pumped. Yes.
Yeah. So, of course, it's also a little bit of a safety net because I do believe we see a lot of things alike, right,
I would say so.
in the area of worship and
Yeah.
worship leadership. So,
Yeah.
with having said that, what I want to talk to you today, because we're a generation apart. You're young enough to be my son. We were joking this morning, like this is the before and after ministry right here. He's the before, I'm the after. This is what you have to look forward to, kid. What we want to talk about is the power of knowing your audience, the power of knowing who you serve. I think it's a superpower that a lot of worship leaders, whether I'm not talking about younger worship leaders, I'm talking about worship leaders in general.
Yeah.
It is one of the first steps that they skip over, right? What do you think about that statement right there?
Yeah, I agree. I think one thing that's interesting to me is it doesn't have to take a lot of skill or ability or talent to ask good questions, to grab someone and take them to coffee or lunch, or like really just get off the platform and into the seats and to start getting to know your people. Like again, like introvert, extrovert doesn't really matter. You can do it, and it doesn't take reading a book to figure out how to do that. You know what I mean? Like,
yes,
it's a low bar to be able to, again, get yourself off from the platform and get to know the people that you're serving every Sunday. Again, through some good questions, saying, hey, I've got lunch free next week, name the day, let's go. And just like hear their story. people love talking about themselves. Like, and that's not a knock. It's just like, if you just ask one or two questions about like, hey, how'd you get here? Or hey,
Right.
tell me a little of your story. How do you know Jesus? Like, it's off to the races. And that's kind of the snowball effect of you start getting to know who you're serving. And that is the foundational key. I think that's the first step in being a leader.
That's exactly right. And it's less about them talking and it's kind of more about them being heard.
Exactly right.
It's not that they necessarily, you don't have to be an extrovert or, even self-centered to want to talk about yourself.
Correct.
It's because you want to be known and you want to be heard, right?
Yeah, there's like the old adage of I don't care how much you know until I know how much you care.
Right.
And that's completely accurate. I've seen that time and again. And they really want to know how much you care about them, like getting to know their story and who they are, and really just allowing them to have a voice.
Right. And so you're basically skipping to the end of everything I want to say
sorry.
about this.
So
No,
sorry.
it's great because at the end of the day, what we're saying is it's a lot less about music and it's a lot more about relationship, right?
I would say so. Yeah. It's a lot more about pastoring, ministering than it is just being a knockout musician.
Yes.
Which is great.
I used to have this kind of adage that I carried with myself. I wasn't like proclaiming this on some billboard or something, but I always think to myself, people will follow who they trust. People will trust those who are vulnerable before them. And what I mean by vulnerable is like a willingness to let them see the real you, but also a willingness to hear the real them.
Yes.
Right.
And creating a safe space for that.
Right. So relationship is the pathway to worship leadership because you're building, like you're clearing out things that are in the way of relationship. And so if this is a relationship where I'm leading you into the throne room of God and worship, like we need a clear path.
We do.
So
it unlocks a lot.
Right. So I wrote down some things to talk about and kind of in that same vein, this is your third church that you've served at, right?
Yeah.
And you've served at three really different churches,
distinct.
different cultures, different DNA, right?
Correct.
So I'm interested to know, and I've watched you from up close, and they all I've seen like there have been some really, really positive days of ministry, right? So what are some things across those three cultures that have been similar? And then what are some things that have been a little bit different at each culture? Because I'm gonna talk about those things when you get to the end of this.
Yeah. I think the first place where our paths first crossed, I was still wet behind the ears, fresh 23, had no clue what I was doing. But I think that there was a low pressure environment and culture just in general. And of course, when you have Travis Cottrell as your life vest, it keeps you afloat. I mean, that's super helpful as well. And so
I've never been called a life vest. That's funny. I've needed a life vest most days. But.
Fair. I think like there was a lot of loving, supportive, encouraging people, staff and congregants, like people that's genuinely we're for you, wanted to see you succeed. I felt that. And so like from my first place, I think that was really, it was a lot of, I was young, but I was trying to figure stuff out. Like even how to use Planning Center, ProPresenter, those basics, the tools that you need to have in your tool belt. That was like, okay, I'm going to figure it out. And of course, watch you. I basically was like, what is he doing? Okay, I'm going to do that too.
Oh no.
Yeah. So like making band schedules, it's some of the things that some people don't love doing, but like you have to learn how to do it. But again, all of that was done in, I'd say, a low pressure environment. There wasn't just like a thrust you to the front line and go, all right, you better succeed. You know what I mean? There was some grace. There was a lot of room for being able to be like, hey, we know you're going to make mistakes along the way, but there's a lot of room for grace and for you making mistakes. Like, let's go and let's learn together. I think in the same breath, there was a lot of turnover, like leadership turnover and different things that, I don't know, I think sometimes it made the environment feel unstable at times. A takeaway from that I appreciate now, and I didn't realize at the time, it taught me what the power of consistency, and being that person or that face in your congregant's life. Like, and we were also very involved with college ministry, a lot of turnover there as well. But my wife and I were the ones really who the students and who are people on Sunday mornings saw week after week, and we were pretty a constant presence for them. And I think later I was like, that was really a powerful thing to learn, was the power of being that consistent, constant face and presence for someone, even in the midst of maybe some other leadership turnover, when you're there for several years and you are, able to really dig deep with people and develop and deepen relationships. I think that was a helpful thing for me to realize, was just being available, being present, constant through change, was helpful.
Constant through change. I'm sitting here thinking about how the Lord, regardless of your church circumstance, whether you're a big church or a smaller church, a growing church, a church plant, a church that is looking to revive in some ways, like the outer things can be crazy, but God can enable you to be the steady one, the steady person. So if the Lord is your anchor, that sounds so churchy, but it's true. If you allow him to be your anchor, and if you're digging into relationships around you, you can be not only steady for yourself, but steady for everyone around you.
Yeah, that's correct.
And that really is, then you can become a key leader to usher people into better days
100%.
Rather than the poster child for the rocky days, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I feel like excellence was definitely something that was strive for, not to show off how good we are, not because perfection was the goal, but excellence, and something I've learned how to define excellence, it's doing the most with what you have where you are. And I feel like that's exactly what we did. Like, you remember, and that was always our goal, was to do things well, to do things authentically, to do things in a way that always we made sure it was pointing back to Jesus. I really appreciated that. My second stop was very different, super unique. I mean, it's outside of the Bible Belt. It was in a very unchurched area. Like I think 96% of the region we were in was unchurched on Sundays. And so pros and cons to that, we found a lot of pros to it. But it had 16 campuses. So it was like huge. A lot of emphasis was placed on deep collaboration. There was a lot of like, hey, we're all one church, right? And so a lot of inter-campus communication, cooperation, even doing things together, which was really, really cool. I think that teaches you, and that taught me how to work together to accomplish the same goal, even if maybe some ideas are different.
Right. But learning how to share that vision.
Share the vision, find a common place, let's go. Yeah. Very deep and repeated DNA. There was lots of, different mantras or words or verbiage that we use, that everyone used, that
keep
was
everybody on the same page,
reemphasized constantly.
Right.
And I think there was a heavy emphasis on, it really was kind of a church planting life. So it was like, you got to recruit your people. Like you're in charge of, if you want another electric guitar player on your team, well then start like having conversations, start putting feelers out there, make it happen, like find somebody to recruit. So that was very helpful as well. And I think a large emphasis was on evangelism, because at any given Sunday, for where we were again at this second stop, you had people that were all across the spectrum of spiritual walks that would come to church on Sunday mornings. There was definitely not an inherent Southern knowledge that you almost like, it's through osmosis of just being around, right. Like this area where who Jesus is, all the churchy things.
The givens were different.
The givens were completely different.
Right.
And there really wasn't any given except for we're all pretty new, and there were a lot of people that didn't know Jesus from the man on the moon. So It honestly was actually a really cool place to start, because you almost had to, it was a challenge to drop some of the Christianese language that most people don't even know anyway, and really get down to like bare bones, basic. We're running to God, and I'm asking you to come with me. It's just like, how can you boil things down to the bare minimum for Sunday mornings when you're talking with your people and leading them, which is really cool.
I want to chase something right there because you said, kind of dropping the Christianese language. Mm-hmm. When you were talking earlier, and I was thinking about what a sponge you were in those early days, and you were just a student. You were just a student of kind of everything. And I still think of myself like, when I'm in a situation, I'm in a culture, even when I'm leading in some regard, I'm thinking, what is the student in me studying?
Yeah.
And so, like for a guy like you that had never really been disconnected from Christianese language. Like you were a church boy.
Grew up in it.
Grew up like just completely engrossed in it.
Yeah.
So that became what you were studying, right? Like how to reach a people whose paradigm of culture and church was not only different, but almost null and void, right?
It wasn't even post-church. It wasn't like they came, as a kid and they just it wasn't for them or whatever. It was like, I've never stepped foot in a church. I don't know who in the world Jesus even is. So it forced you, again, to get to the bare bones of Christianity, of how to display who God is. Hey, guys, today we're singing songs to God and about God. It's like, it's almost harder to come up with the simpler descriptions or prompts.
Because you can't skip over the givens.
You can't. Yeah.
Right.
There's nothing really that should be assumed.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah. So that was good. And again, excellence was there. So that's a common thread of everywhere I've been.
Right.
But super unique and even very ethnically diverse, which growing up where I did was not the case at all. And so that was awesome to be able to learn different leanings, different preferences, different backgrounds, different stories from like an ethnically diverse and wide range of people who are coming to your church as well.
Right.
So, and people from all over the country that were now like transplanted there or world.
Right.
It was just really great time to be able to hear stories. I think that helped fuel the fire even more of you got to get to know who you are serving, who you are shepherding, who you're ministering to.
Right. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I don't want to skip your present assignment here at the church at West Franklin, here in our system, but I do want to jump in right there and say, so this is so interesting that we're talking about the power of knowing your people, because as worship leaders and as ministers, if we don't know who we're ministering to, then we're leading with the wrong things in the front line.
That's good, yeah.
So, because I'm always I always say to anyone that I'm having a conversation with about this kind of thing with, I say we are called to speak a language and to teach a language, and so we speak their language, but then we teach them the language of worship. But we have to be able to meet them where they are and speak their language, right? Yeah. And I think you're such a great guy to talk about this with. You who have lived in, so this weirdo guy right here has lived in Holton, Maine.
Yes.
And then Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And then rural Western Tennessee.
Yep.
And then
South Florida,
and now Middle Tennessee.
Yeah.
Like, talk about speaking languages.
3 corners.
Cultural languages, church languages, all kinds of languages. So as you look at that, and even all the things that you've shared about your experience, what, as a worship planner, so think about your planning of worship, what are common threads that have helped you in every spot? And those things that we've talked about, like speaking not the Christianese and all those things, take those off now. What were common threads of things that never changed for you as a worship leader / planner?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, if you're not plugged into your own relationship with the Lord and making sure that you are growing and deepening your walk with Him, then everything else is off kilter. So like, obvious answer to start,
right?
But like the most important one.
The most important.
That
can't
has
skip over it.
You cannot skip it. You shouldn't, and you can't. Yeah, you can't shortchange that. So I think that's had to be consistent for me wherever I've been, is to like continue to grow as a believer in Jesus. Like I can't lead unless I'm willing to be led first by Jesus, and then obviously anyone else maybe who's overseeing me. So that's number one. And that's been the case all the way through. I think another thing that is the case is if I'm not helping people sing, open their mouths and sing, or at least making it like lowering the price of admission for everybody to feel like you can sing. Then what am I doing? So that's been huge for me, and that really
You're making my day. Keep talking.
Last couple of years has been a big emphasis for me. Like if now obviously we don't know, like it's someone who has their mouth closed and they're kind of hunched over and their hands are open. That may be more of a worshipful moment for them than appearance isn't everything. We know that, but if I'm not doing what I can to get people to sing on Sundays, why am I here? Like as a worship leader through music, my primary goal is to get people to sing to Jesus. Right. And so singable key, I know maybe we're jumping the gun on some things, but like singable keys, familiar songs, like not doing 3 new songs a week just because you heard it on the radio and you got to do it. Like
you're speaking my language right now.
It's, I think something else that's I've carried with me through everywhere is people want a genuine and transparent, like appropriately transparent leader on the platform, even on Sundays, like off it, of course, but even on. So like if you start a song in the wrong key, like, okay, make a joke like, hey, wow, bad day for me. Apparently didn't wake up on the right side of the bed. Let's try that again, guy.
Because authenticity trumps perfection.
100%.
Every single time.
That's exactly right. Yes. Yes. And so those are some of the things that I think have been with me through it all. And you can never please everybody. Of course, like as soon as you try, you end up pleasing nobody. But I do think it's possible to appeal to a variety, like a wide variety of preferences I've told people when they're like, thank you for doing old songs, because I love hymns. I love old songs. I grew up on that. But like, I'm like, hey, absolutely. I love hymns. I love the old stuff. But also, I love the kind of newer, but like middle of the, like 90s. Give me some Michael W. Worship and Worship Again albums. I'm there. Give me some Open the Eyes of My Heart. But like, I love some new stuff too. Like, I think it's important to have variety. And that's something else that has been common through everywhere that I've been. Is don't just pelt them with 80 new songs a year. Don't just do 2002 greatest hits, and maybe don't only just do hymns. Like, let's make a variety, and let's hopefully appeal to a lot of people in the process. You know what I mean?
I want to say 1,000 things. I need a filter. I need a Holy Spirit filter, because I could talk about all of that. Like, I think about, so for my people group, my church family, people I lead, I feel like I have to cast a wide net.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So my people group is it's diverse in a lot of ways, particularly age and denominational background. And so I'm always trying to cast a wide net. And so all of those things that you're saying I completely agree with. And I do think that we lose sight, I can lose sight of the idea that I am there to help them sing. Now, we're not saying that the definition of worship is limited to singing. That is not what we're saying.
Good catch.
What we're saying is our job, one of our main primary jobs, is to make them sing, right? Mm-hmm. So if they can't sing our songs, because we're always putting new things in front of them, if they're not singable keys or whatever, we're not speaking their language in the sense that we know who they are, where they are in terms of their minds, their hearts, and their emotions, their experience, then we're going to miss the mark more than we hit the mark. And that's not that we don't have a foot forward, right? It's not that we don't want to teach, to bring them along, to encourage them into new waters, right? But we have to go to where they are and walk with them there at a pace that's palatable, right?
Yeah, I've seen you do that where we were together the first time, like slowly steer and turn the big cruise ship. It's just like 1 degree of new trajectory every year. How, like, maybe turn the table on you, how in your planning and your methodology, how did you not just want, how could you play, what gave you the patience to play the long game and be like, I want XYZ like right now, that's not attainable. And as I'm getting to know people, it's going to be, I got to play long ball. What kept you reined in and what kept you going incremental changes and shifts?
Right. There were a couple of things. I think the first one I want to go back to is that if you lead with relational goals rather than musical goals, then your chances of winning, of succeeding, are going to be greater.
That's so good.
You know, before I worked at a church full time, you know, I traveled and sang at churches. One of my mentors was a worship leader named Joe Estes. He was in Alabama. I remember going to his church. I was doing a concert there that night. I was there singing that morning with him. You know, you do a little teaser song, lead a few songs in the morning before the night. Yeah. I'm sitting out in the lobby because there were, you know, a bunch of services that morning. So we would come out of the service after we had heard the sermon, and I was sitting in the lobby with him, and he's sitting there with me, and this gentleman comes up to him and, "How you doing, Joe?" And Joe called him by name. And, "How you doing? How's your family doing?" And he said, "You know, last week those drums were whatever, A, B, and C." Like he had like 3 complaints. And he goes, I hear you. I was thinking those same things. And then he kind of, it dissolved in like one reply by Joe. Mm-hmm. And then he said, "Do we still have our tea time Tuesday at 9? He goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "Okay, I'll see you then." And he walked away. And I just thought, wow, the way he diffused the complaint with relationship. Yeah. And wow. I just thought, you know what, that guy is going to follow Joe wherever he thinks that, wherever the Lord calls him to lead, because he built those relational roads. Yeah. And his goal was not musical, right? Yeah. It was deeper than that. That's the one thing that I always tried to hold on to. Yeah. The other is this, and this sounds harsh. I used to say this all the time. I'm going to write a book called this, and I don't really mean it because it's not caring enough to a wonderful creative community. Uh-huh. But I always would say, the Lord doesn't care about your songs. He doesn't care about your music. That's not true. Obviously, I don't mean that literally. Right. But what I mean is, when I plan worship, I try not to think, what does Travis, the musician, the songwriter, the arranger, what does he want to do this Sunday? Yeah. Because that's not what matters. Yep. What matters is what can our people hold on to. Now, sometimes those things converged, and hopefully they can continue to converge as you stay at a church, and you are kind of immersed into their DNA, and you kind of like a marriage. Yeah. Not really, but sort of, that you kind of. If God calls you there's a reason. There's something about your DNA that you're going to impart to them. Yep. But there's a lot of their DNA that you've got to embrace and allow to be part of you. Yep. So that was kind of, that's kind of what I've always kind of led with. Like,
that's the approach.
It doesn't matter what Travis writes or sings. Like, if it works, that's great. But that's not what I'm putting on the plate. Like, what Travis songs can we sing this week?
That's right. I feel like that's a big bottleneck. Right. For opportunity.
It really is. And so, and it is a challenge, like when the idea that a worship leader is gifted the way he or she is gifted, and the reason they're called to that job are not actually the gifts that they'll lead with. I was having a great conversation with my executive pastor here, who I love. I mean, I love this guy, and we have so many great conversations. And I said something in passing, just being funny about some things we were talking about. I said, I use 80% of my highest gifts 20% of the time. And I use that other 20% where my gifts are down here 80% of the time, just being kind of silly, you know. But it really is true. But that's kind of how that's the economy of the Lord in every calling. Yep. That, and you'll go back to the Word and see that that's the way God used people.
Yeah, 100%.
He didn't use the shiny things, and he used the people who had struggles and had weaknesses, and that's why he gave Moses the leadership to say things to the people of God that would last forever, because he hated to talk, right? And he had a problem talking. So that's that's how I kind of manage that, and just lead with people.
That's really good.
And then the music kind of follows.
Yeah, that prompted someone. It may have been at where we just were previously to hear said, "You're not worshiping at people, you are worshiping with people."
Right.
There is a big difference, and something else that I've caught in my time was, a leader from our church that we were in Florida. He said he would always say, we the bands, we are the road signs that are pointing to the destination. We're not the destination. We're not the shiny, like everyone's anticipating arriving at you. No one should arrive at you. Like, they don't need more of you. They need more of Jesus.
Oh, goodness.
But I love that because, road signs are important. They play a part to play. It's there's a purpose for them, and you're pointing to something else, and it's not yourself. There's nothing shiny or amazing about them. They have an integral role, but they're pointing to destination, and I love that. And that is very important, and something to keep in mind as you're planning. Always should be that.
Right.
It's not a talent showcase. You can go 10 miles down the road to the Ryman, or go up to the Grand Ole Opry and see an amazing performance if you want to. That's not why they're here.
That's exactly right. And that leads us to this thought. And I want to say this in a way that is encouraging because, the Lord has given me opportunities to be in this kind of worship industry, or part of what my calling is to provide resources.
Yeah.
But so tell me how you as a worship leader, and now you live here in Nashville, so you're like inundated with the informers, right?
True.
With the resource givers.
Yeah.
And so these resources are amazing. We can't live without them.
Yeah.
Whether it's arrangements or ideas of worship, we are, the visual generation where we're getting songs by watching people lead them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you take what the informers give you,
mm-hmm.
and how do you apply it? In other words,
contextualize.
How do you contextualize it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. There are, I feel like more than ever, big name churches, but even not so big name churches that are constantly pumping out fantastic albums, like well produced, amazing sounds, some great truth. I think more than ever, the accessibility of thousands of songs that have been born out of local congregations and bodies it's more than we've ever had. That may be hyperbole, I don't know, but I really feel like it's almost to the place where it's so much that it's a little bit paralyzing.
Right.
Like, where do I start?
Oh, we can't keep up with it. Yeah.
Yeah. And there are, like, of course, the big names that are out there that a lot of churches are pulling from. I think some of this has been trial and error for me, honestly. Like, some songs that I've thought that's going to hit really haven't. But one thing that I really try to do is I think there's strength in numbers, and I think that there's strength in leading alongside other people as well. So like pulling people into the process. So for a new song, I'll often ask like a friend from the congregation who's not even on the team, "Hey man, have you heard this song yet come out?" If it's a yes, like, okay, what are your thoughts on it? What do you think? You've been around this congregation for a while. Do you think it could jive with this body? And if it's a no, like, hey, here it is. Can you listen to it? Tell me what you think. I think it's kind of, in sometimes, like, getting a sense from your own congregation of what they need, what they like. I don't know if you don't do that every time, but like, that's important for me to know even before I choose X, Y, Z. And I know that kind of goes back to knowing your people, and we started in the first question with that, but like, it really starts at the one-by-one, face-to-face conversations, and it starts with the getting to know people individually. That should inform where you're looking, and then probably would help you figure out, okay, well, let's try this song. So contextualizing it, if you're going to contextualize it, you got to know your context.
Right.
That's like obvious,
Really
but
good.
also not
Yeah, cross-stitch that, Mac. That's really good. I like it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I should. So I think there's that. And again, it's a little bit trial and error. Like just try something. And again, like pull your band, like ask some singers, people that have been there longer than you who may have an idea, or like, oh, we've tried something like that before. It didn't really go that great. Or I think that'd be amazing on a choir Sunday that we have. Would you consider doing that? Like it's being open to suggestions. It's being open to feedback.
Right.
And then matriculating that and saying, let's do it. So I do have a few wells that I draw from that are pretty big that I stick with. I feel like if I wander too far outside, it's almost like a paralysis by analysis. Like you're trying to figure out, well, what about this? And it's overwhelming.
I love everything you said. And there was you in passing just said something about your people, what they need and what they like.
Yeah.
Those are the two things. And they're not always the same. And so this is not about always just giving them a steady diet of what they like, right? But it is speaking their language enough so that they trust you to lead them into those new waters of what they need.
Yeah.
And so everything you're saying, I completely agree with. I always go, Travis, use your brain here. Like how, if there's something like there's a new song and I'm going, I have to myself go, how can I contextualize this for my people here? Is this going to work?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Is this going to work? Just because I see it working in all these other places, that doesn't mean it's going to work for me. It
100%.
may mean that it's going to work a little bit later or maybe never. But especially in light of that, we are in a generation where it's coming at us so fast. So many new songs, so many new ideas, and they're all great, but they're not all meant for my people. And we're the gatekeepers for that.
We really are.
We really are. And so it's important for us as worship leaders. I always think that, like when I create a resource, that's for a company or whatever, and I imagine it going out to those people, and obviously I create it with the heart that I want it to reach as many people as possible.
Yeah.
But I'm going, Lord, I pray that these worship leaders, that she or he, that they will use their mind and use their gifts and contextualize this for their people instead of just dropping it on them like this. Like there may be some changes or some nuances.
Yeah.
Hopefully there aren't on some, because I really, for me personally, like I'm trying to think about how does this resource cast a wide net?
Yeah. Can it fit in a church of 50? Can it fit in a church of 5,000?
Exactly.
I mean, people.
Exactly.
Different corners of the country, different demographics.
That's exactly right.
There's a lot. And even if you're in a place like South Florida, huge like Hispanic influence, Caribbean influence, maybe you're not just going to do a 1-4-6-5 progression. Like get your band together. They love to jam. Make it your own.
Right.
Like take the song, keep the bones, but like put some of your own skin on it.
That's exactly right. That's exactly
which
right.
I think is a cool thing. Obviously it has to have scriptural integrity.
Right.
Like it's got to fit through, is this correct about what it's saying about the Lord, about what it's saying about us? Those are obvious, but I feel like those should be mentioned.
Right.
That rubric is super important.
It really is.
Are you feeding gospel truth to your people? I really feel like we're the water purifier, almost like a Brita water filter, where it's like people don't come in just analyzing and dissecting every stitch of song that you're leading on Sundays because they trust you.
Right.
But because they trust you, you got to be the filter for some of these things and make sure you're feeding them scriptural, gospel-saturated songs and content. Right.
So when you make room to kind of apply your church's DNA to a current popular song or whatever, it allows you to make it your own. And then it also helps you because it helps you kind of divorce yourself from the ails. We were talking about that word. The ails,
both
of comparison. Right.
Sure.
Because we see churches online. We see these great,
killing it,
wonderfully edited YouTube videos. They're killing it. And, we go, my church isn't like that. You know what? And that's exactly how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Because God has called you to this moment with these people. to create something beautiful for him. And it's not going to look like anywhere else.
That's it.
And it's not supposed to. And so that comes right back, as we wrap up this time to where we started, is knowing the power of knowing your people and the people that you're called to serve. And when you kind of fully embrace who they are, and then figure out how to apply who you are to what you're doing, it can be a beautiful thing. And they're going to sing. Almost every Sunday I pick a moment where everything stops and we listen. Are they singing? Are they with us?
Yeah.
Are they with us?
Yeah.
And, sometimes I do it at a place where they wouldn't expect it. And just so we can know, there they are. And listen how beautiful it is. It's so beautiful. It's beautiful, isn't it?
There's really nothing like hearing people at the top of their lungs, the body of Christ on a Sunday morning or any event that you have, just worshiping Jesus together. I don't know. There's just something about it. Stripping away even some of the music, some of the sound, and just going, let's sing.
I love it so much.
Yeah, raise your voice.
I love it. You're awesome, Mack.
You're awesome, Travis.
You're gifted and wonderful.
Thank you. Likewise, man.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
This. Yeah.
It's been good.
Thanks for being with us.
Full circle moment here.
That's right. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Elevate Podcast. I'd love for you to join us this September for the Elevate Conference here at Brentwood Baptist Church in Nashville, Tennessee. It's a one-day event that's crafted to encourage and equip your entire team, everybody on your team, with role-specific breakouts, inspiring keynotes, and networking with other church leaders from across the country. Register now at elevatechurchconference.com. You can find the link at the top of today's show notes. Next week, join us. We're going to talk about burnout and building healthy rhythms for your staff. Check out the show notes for resources and registration links. And we'll see you at the Elevate Conference on September 9th. Until next time, we'll see you.